Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Time for True Show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to a Time for Truth show, and happy Labor Day weekend. Great time of the year, and it's good to have you back with us again. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and many of you have been asking, how do I avail myself of all the previous episodes? It's very simple. You click on YouTube, you go to a Time for Truth show, a Time for Truth show, and you hit the subscribe button. We'll be very happy to have you as one of our members, and you will be availed of all the other episodes which are very useful to you. And tonight, we're going to be dealing with something that so many of us have been talking about, looking at, some with concern, some really looking at it, whether it's a positive thing, a negative thing. And nothing is always negative, and everything always has a positive and negative. But when there's a negative, it's important to realize that and to control it, because otherwise it can create harm. Harm is not just physical, it can also be mental. So today we're going to deal with social media and what's been happening in our world as we achieve cell phones. And a lot of benefits came with that. Being able to speak to people, emergency calls, talking to someone across the globe. All beautiful things. But unfortunately, it led also to a lot of almost kind of an addiction to the cell phone and to the media that comes across, delivered through that mode of exchange. And so we want to look at that today, because when anything is done to excess, as any other item, even if it were a drug, or if we were trying to lose weight and we were trying to control our sugar addiction, media can become an addiction. And we want to control that so that we don't get an adverse effect. And so we're going to kind of go a step at a time to create a foundation, because a human being has different parts of the mind. There's a part of our mind that's analytical and logical, which helps us to learn, helps us to get new techniques, and helps us to delve through life in a positive way, avoiding negativity. Then there's another part of the mind that's a more reactive mind, which then takes a look at circumstances that are been very dangerous to us in the past. And there you see a picture on the screen of the two different minds. You see the person with the analytical mind, that's a very logical and conscious mind. And then you have the reactive mind, which is the unconscious mind, which has a lot of negative incidents that happened to us in the past. Traumatic incidents, incidents of emotional loss. Maybe you're breaking up with your girlfriend. Maybe you're losing a job. Maybe falling down on a basketball court and having a physical injury with a loss, or on a football field. And the reactive mind is also there to protect you, but unfortunately can be brought back into motion by things that you hear, which is how the social media interacts, and how we have to be careful that when we're in social media, that we're not plagued by our reactive mind versus being analytical and choosing what we want. We want to be careful that the messages are not so repeated, and I know most of you have already seen these different YouTube videos showing repetitive messages. So when the repetitive messages are brought out, subliminally, you start taking them in. It's really a mild form almost of what you would call a mild brainwashing. And so what happens, that's not something we would want. So let's first take a look at how the mind works. And so we're going to show you 2 videos of something that's very important so that we get an idea first of the basis of how the mind works. And we're not talking about chemically, we're not talking about glandularly, but we're talking about how it works mechanically to protect you. And so if we can engineer, let's put on those first 2 videos and let's take a look at this.
Dianetics by L. Ron Hubbard.
Do you know someone who has never fully recovered from a serious loss in life? Or a traumatic experience? And in your own day-to-day life, do you sometimes experience self-doubts, negative thoughts, unreasonable fears, upsets, or irrational behavior? The painful experiences of our past clearly have an effect upon our present behavior. But to what degree and why? What causes the mind to depart from rational thought or behavior? That is the subject of Dianetics. Every moment of your life, your mind is recording everything that's happening to you. Every sight, every sound, every taste, smell, pain, emotion, touch, everything. These recordings form what is called the time track, a consecutive record of all the experiences accumulated throughout your existence. Your mind uses this information to make decisions and solve problems relating to your survival. The better its decisions, the better you survive. Most of this data is stored in your analytical mind, that part of your mind that thinks, remembers, and calculates. But some of your experiences are not recorded into those analytical memory banks. It is a discovery of Dianetics that all of your painful experiences are stored in a previously unknown part of the mind. It's called the reactive mind, and it throws those experiences back at you in an irrational attempt to get you to avoid the same painful thing from happening to you again. Here's a simple and common example. At some point, you've probably gotten sick from eating tainted food. Later in life, if you see or smell or possibly even think about that particular food again, you start to feel a little nauseous. Now, you know that logically, the mere sight or smell or thought of a food can't physically make your body ill, because you haven't actually eaten it again. And yet you're experiencing the same sick feeling you had before. This is your reactive mind, making you re-experience the same perceptions it recorded in that earlier incident, in a crude attempt to protect you from what it believes is a dangerous situation. It reacts solely on a stimulus-response basis and below your awareness. The painful experiences hidden in your reactive mind are the cause of your fears, insecurities, negative thoughts, unwanted emotions, and irrational behavior. You have been accumulating these deeply buried experiences throughout your existence. In fact, the most damaging among them occurred before you were born. Dianetics reveals how these negative experiences are stored and contains a technology to free yourself from them. What would life be like if all of the pain you've experienced no longer affected your abilities, emotions, and behavior? You would think and behave rationally, making the best possible decisions relating to your survival. You would be able to utilize your imagination and creativity to their fullest. You would be confident, more intelligent and productive and happier. You would be yourself, free to enjoy life and reach your full potential. In short, your mind would be clear. That is the goal of Dianetics. People achieve this state every day, and so can you.
So there you have the mind in operation and the two portions, the analytical and the reactive. And there you can see that by clearing yourself of this reactive, you're actually happy. But now let's take a look at how social media interacts with this. Because what happens in social media, and I know you're probably aware of this also, sometimes young people can write things that are harmful mentally, that hurt to other, I don't know if you would call it, not friends of theirs, but people that they know. And you've seen how some have been affected so adversely that they even committed suicide. You know, and now you can see the mechanism that occurred because they were ostracized with the media. And what occurred is that portion of the mind got so heavily, you could say the button got pushed so heavily that they started feeling horribly and had no solution. And so that's one effect. Now the other effect is that you saw in the video that these incidents contain certain phrases or actions that also can be brought back through social media when the media is trying to possibly sell a product. And the product is something that deals with their image, and someone has a low image of themselves. And because they have a low image of themselves, they look at something and maybe they decide that they're going to go for it, but it may not be a positive thing because it may be making them subservient, where you want to make them more independent. You know, you don't want them subliminally to react to messages about how they should react. Each one of us should really decide for ourselves how we want to react, where we want to go, and we should select what information we get and not get. But let's take a look at how this can occur over a period of time. We'll put up the first image for you so we can go over what's happening on the social media. And so the first thing we want to go over is that, as you saw in the video, we all want to survive. So we seek survival patterns or survival entities. What I mean by survival entities, well, the social media can offer us survival entities. But who are these entities? How much do you know about them? And are they really out there just to help you, which many of them are, but some of them maybe are there to just sell a product. And maybe that product is to lose weight. But are you really going to lose weight? And is it really dealing with your inner problem? Or is it a Band-Aid? So people want to have strong role models. And what happens sometimes, unfortunately, with the media, they become dependent on those models that appear, because it's a public relations, appear to be successful. You've seen on the media sometimes the same type of personality, but they're all different people, but the messages are almost all the same. And it almost becomes a funny thing. So now the phone not only entertains them, but they start losing their own self-confidence. They lose their own creativity. Why? Because they're on the phone, but they're really not with people. They're not interacting. They're not imagining. And the imagination is such an important thing for all of us, because the imagination is where we think about what maybe we want to be, what we want to maybe design, maybe something we want to paint, maybe a different way we want to play a basketball game or a different move that we have when we're playing basketball. And all those things come from our ability to logically look, imagine different circumstances, which are all very positive. What problem is that when we become dependent on the phone or on the social media, now we're losing that personal integrity, our certainty that what we feel is important, our own personal strength. We start becoming dependent on someone else, a different entity, especially when we maybe experience a loss or what you saw in the video, something that is harmful either physically or mentally, and we're looking for solution. So let's go to the next image, and we'll go on to a little bit more, and we'll build on what we're elucidating on here. And so let's bring about, again, now this reactive mind, because what it's trying to do, this reactive portion of your mind is trying to protect you. It's protect you from losses. It doesn't want you to lose again. So if it sees similarities, it'll start making you, as you saw in the video, avoid those, but it's an unconscious reaction. Sometimes you've probably seen how at times you've gotten angry and you wondered why you've gotten so angry. It didn't make sense to you and later on you felt bad. Or you've seen someone else that you were just trying to explain something to and they got very angry at you. And this can also happen on social media, but not realizing that, you have this portion of the mind, then it starts getting out of control. And then you may seek a solution, but that solution may not really be something that's going to deal with what really occurred and why you got so angry or why you got depressed or why you started crying or you started, having different emotions that you didn't really want to have, that you weren't proud of, and that you could do something about. But what happens is, since we're so used to social media, we go on because it distracts us. But the distraction doesn't really handle what's bothering us. It's like sugarcoating something, you could say, or painting over a wall that has rust on it. We're not going to deal with the rust. We're going to paint over it. But we know that logically the rust is going to come back again. So we can go on the social media, temporarily become happy, maybe find something that appeals to us, but then come back in the same situation. This can happen when, maybe you break up with your girlfriend and or you lose a job. Well, let's keep with breaking up with your partner. Very common. And you feel unhappy, you're sad. And, you don't want to take a drug because you don't want to go there. So you go on the social media and you try to distract your attention, which would be fine, but it would be much better to distract it by taking a walk, by going outside, by looking at nature, by maybe walking your dog, to distract yourself in a more natural way that actually puts your attention out. Why do I say that? Because during COVID, when we had social distancing, we were restricted in our homes. We didn't have social contact. And scientifically, through the statistics, we found that social interaction actually did cause different mental and physical problems. Some studies in Stony Brook University showed that this lack of social interaction caused actual illness. This is Stony Brook Medical School. Other results and statistics dealing with drug usage, marijuana. Marijuana usage during COVID went up about 48%. Alcohol use also went up during COVID, about 44%. And obviously, we had a lot of stress. We had no social interaction, very, very little. We were isolated. There was a lot of, loss. There was a lot of sadness, loneliness, stress that came about. So this is how we now know scientifically that we really do need social interaction. Because we could use our cell phones during COVID. We could use our social media during COVID. That wasn't restricted. But we couldn't be with people. And there is a difference being live with people and not being live. And that was proven scientifically by all the results and statistics. that were borne out that occurred during COVID, which is something that in a positive way came out from COVID, is that we realized the importance of our contact or our human interaction, and that it really does have a tremendous effect. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll build on what we're doing here to make it more clear and why it's important to deal with this situation that we have ongoing in our culture, in our society. And engineer, if we could put on the next image, please. Here you're on social media, and you feel that there's a better you now. But that better you is just virtual. So what you're doing is virtual. You're not really in front of people. So when you go out in front of people, maybe your shyness comes out again, and you are disillusioned, or you experience a loss from that because you thought that you were, because virtually you thought you were, but you couldn't interact in a real environment. So maybe you met the person that you thought on social media or by communicating with your cell phone, with pictures, that was going to be your solution, your new partner. All this excitement, you meet, and it doesn't happen because there was really no real solution. It was more of a virtual solution. And you really haven't addressed what caused you to be shy or quiet to begin with. So now it doesn't really come out in the real circumstance, and you experience another loss. So like a drug, or like alcohol, or like chocolate that we love to eat, these give us a temporary false high. And so when that wears off, we're left with a reality, only now we're feeling worse because each one of those addictions makes us less and less effective. We have less of what we want. We're more addicted to something else as a solution to something that really is bothering us. Now, how does that happen in social media? I'll give you an example. It's known that when you achieve something pleasant, your body releases dopamine within itself. Normally, dopamine comes out. What is dopamine? It's what makes you feel high. They're called endorphins. When you do a sport and you do really well, endorphins come out. They call it runner's high. There's all different names for it. Or you feel good after exercise when you first started exhausted. Well, what happens with social media, when you paste something, and I won't name any names of the media, but you put up a post, and people like your post, and you're watching to see if they like you. And so they like your post, and each time you get a like, what's happening is your body is releasing dopamine. But what is actually creating this high is the dopamine that was released from the likes. But now what's going to happen is you're going to now want to put out more posts, and you'll think, well, I just like putting out posts, whereas in reality, you're seeking that high that you get from the likes. If your next post doesn't get those likes or is not shared, now you don't get that dopamine release, and you feel sad. Now, something important to know, because all drugs work in a similar way. The more dependent you become on a drug, the more that drug starts working less and less, which is why drug addicts drink more, take more and more of the drug, or alcoholics will drink more and more and more. Why is that? Because as the body accommodates to that dosage, it needs more to get high. Eventually, it doesn't work anymore, which is why the gateway effect of people going through drugs to a higher and higher, more potent drug and not staying at the low level. Why? Because all drugs and all addictions work the same way. They get to a point and you need more and more. That's why some people, when they get addicted to sugar, well, what do? They need more and more sugar. They start losing their self-image. They get obese. They get lethargic. And what they started out with as a solution is destroying them. So like any drug or alcohol or chocolate, that false high will endanger your future life because now you're addicted. And so now you're addicted to social media. And you're on the media. You think it's just because you enjoy it, but in reality, you're not facing life anymore. So let's take a look at a professional football player here as we end off, who actually had a real injury. Fantastic quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, and he was going to end his football career. But he applied something that dealt with the physical injury, obviously the fear of using that shoulder to throw the football, and you'll see what he said yourself. Let's put on that video engineer for our audience, please.
Sometimes life can be difficult and you feel like something's holding you back. When it appeared my football career was over, I was introduced to Dianetics. It restored my abilities and allowed me to finish with my 3 best years. To win in life, obviously, confidence and self-respect are necessary, but where do you find them? I recommend the book Dianetics.
So there you see a real-life story. And why do I say that to you is that social interaction is great. Do it live. If you have fear, anxiety, or things that bother you and you don't know why, check out Dianetics. You see John Brody did. If you're an athlete, if you've been hurt on the football field, the orthopedist has done everything they could for you because you should get medical treatment always first. Then check out Dianetics and help yourself to recover faster from that injury. And in general, realize that you don't want repeated messages because you don't want to become addicted. You want to have your own self-determinism, your own certainty, your own pride, and have a life that you want. Use the cell phone, use social media in a positive way, but you be in control. There's nothing wrong with technology. It's a wonderful thing. It's a great thing to be able to use the phone and communicate to Europe with a friend of yours. That's not negative. But we just don't want to go into obsessive use of it, and now you understand how that could occur through this video. I hope this has helped you, and until next time, we'll see you on the next episode of A Time for Truth show. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend. Go out and socialize. Go out and have a good time with your family, barbecue, wherever you are.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet